This video is going to be for those of you who are studying for your final exam in algebra. So let's go over this problem. Which of the following answer choices is equivalent to the expression shown below? Now for each of these problems, I recommend that you pause the video and work on it yourself. And then when you're done, you can play the video again to see if you have the right answer. So let's start with the first one. We need to multiply two binomials together. So we need to use the FOIL method. So F stands for first, we're going to multiply 3x by 4x. 3x times 4x is 12x squared. And then we're going to multiply the stuff on the outside. 3x times negative 7, that's negative 21x. And then the stuff on the inside. 5 times 4x is positive 20x. And finally, the last ones. 5 times negative 7 is negative 35. Now let's go ahead and combine like terms. Negative 21 plus 20 is negative 1x, which we can simply write as negative x. So our final answer is 12x squared minus x minus 35. So this corresponds to answer choice B. Number 2. Which of the following is equivalent to the difference of the two polynomials shown below? Is it A, B, C, or D? Well, the first thing we need to do is get rid of the parentheses and distribute the negative sign. Since we don't have anything in front of the first set of parentheses, we can just get rid of it. So this is equal to 9x cubed minus 5x squared plus 7. Now we do have a negative sign in front of the second set of parentheses, so we do need to distribute it. So we're going to have negative 4x cubed and then plus 8x, and then a negative times a negative, that's a positive, so this is going to be plus 9. Now let's combine like terms. So these two, they're similar. They both contain an x cubed. 9 minus 4 is 5. Now these two terms are not like terms. This carries an x squared, this one doesn't, so we can't add them. All we can do is just write them the way they are. Now these two are like terms, so we can add 7 and 9, which will give us 16. And so this is it. It's 5x cubed minus 5x squared plus 8x plus 16. And so that corresponds to answer choice C. Now what about this one? What is the slope of the line that passes through the points 3, negative 5 and negative 9, negative 1? The formula that we need for this problem is this equation. The slope is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So for the first point, x1 is going to be 3, y1 is negative 5. x2 and y2 represents the coordinates for the second point. So y2 is negative 1, and then minus y1, which is negative 5. x2 is negative 9, and then minus x1, which is positive 3. So what is negative 1 minus negative 5? Whenever you have two negative signs next to each other, they will change it to a positive sign. So negative 1 plus 5, that's going to be 4. And then negative 9 minus 3 is going to be negative 12. If you have a negative and a positive, it becomes a negative sign. So this is just negative 9 minus 3. Our next step is to reduce the fraction. Negative 12 is basically negative 4 times 3. And so we could cancel a 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. And we could put the negative on the top of the fraction. So this simplifies to negative 1/3, which means that answer choice E is the right answer. Number 4. Which of the following answer choices is equal to the expression shown below? So for this one, we need to use the order of operations. Particularly, perhaps you heard of this term, PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So first, we need to work on the stuff inside the parentheses. 2 minus 9 is negative 7. Next, we need to work on the exponents. Negative 7 squared basically means that we're multiplying two negative 7s together. Next, we can work on multiplication. Negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49. And 3 times 49, well, 3 times 50 is 150, and if you take away a 3 from that, that'll give you 147. Now the last thing we need to do is add. 8 plus 147 is 155. So this is the answer, which corresponds to answer choice D. Number 5, factor each expression completely. So this is a free response problem, and let's start with the first one. How can we factor 9x squared minus 64? Now this is a formula that can help you, and it's the difference of perfect squares. A squared minus b squared is going to be equal to, so what you do is you take the square root of a squared, which is a, and then take the square root of b squared, which is b, and then one of them will be a plus, the other will be a minus. So let's apply the same technique to this problem. So what is the square root of 9x squared? The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of x squared is x. So in this case, a is 3x. Now, if b squared is 64, what is b? What is the square root of 64? The square root of 64 is 8. So the answer is going to be 3x plus 8 and 3x minus 8. So that's how you can factor an expression using the difference of squares method. Now let's move on to the second one. So here we have a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1. How can we factor this expression? For a situation like this, here's a quick and simple method. Find two numbers that multiply to 12, but that add to the middle coefficient of 7. So what two numbers multiply to 12 but add to 7? We can list out the factors of 12. 1 times 12 is 12, 2 times 6 is 12, and 3 times 4 is 12. Only 3 and 4 will add up to 7. So this is what we need. 3 plus 4 is 7, 3 times 4 is 12. So all we got to do is write x plus 3 times x plus 4. And so that's how we can factor this expression. To check your work, what you could do is FOIL this expression. X times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 4 is 12. And so this is going to give us x squared plus 7x plus 12. So this right here is the answer. That's how you can factor this trinomial. Now let's move on to the third example. Six x squared plus x, but let's write that as 1x minus 15. So this time, we have a trinomial where the leading coefficient is not 1, it's 6. So the method that we're going to use to factor this expression is going to be different than the one we used for number 2. So what's our first step? The first thing you want to do is multiply the leading coefficient by the constant term. So you want to multiply 6 and negative 15. 6 times negative 15 is 6 times 10 is 60, 6 times 5 is 30, 60 plus 30 is 90. So this will give us negative 90. Now, what two numbers multiply to negative 90 but add to positive 1? If you're not sure, what you could do is make a list. Negative 90 divided by 1 is negative 90. If you take negative 90 divided by 2, you get negative 45. If you divide it by 3, you get negative 30. Now, negative 90 divided by 4, it doesn't give us a nice number, so we're going to skip that. If we divide it by 5, it's negative 18. If we divide it by 6, negative 15. 7 and 8 doesn't go into 90. If we divide it by 9, we get negative 10. And if we divide it by 10, we get negative 9. Once the numbers begin to reverse, you can stop at that point. Now, which pair of numbers will add up to 1? So looking at the list, if we look at 9 and negative 10, that's going to add up to negative 1. But positive 10 and negative 9 adds up to positive 1. And so this is what we're going to use. Now, here's how we're going to use those numbers. We're going to replace 1x with 10x and negative 9x. So you can write it as 10x minus 9x, or you could say 9x plus 10x. It really doesn't matter. So I'm going to write 10x and negative 9x. Our next step is to factor by grouping. And the way you do this is you take out the GCF, the greatest common factor, in the first two terms. The greatest common factor is going to be 2x. 6x squared divided by 2x is 3x. 10x divided by 2x is 5. Now, let's take out the GCF in the last two terms. This is going to be negative 3. Negative 9x divided by negative 3 is 3x. Negative 15 divided by negative 3 is positive 5. Now, notice that these two expressions are the same. If you see that, that means you're on the right track. So what we're going to do is factor out the GCF once again. The GCF is these two expressions, 3x plus 5. So we're going to write it once. If you take this expression divided by 3x plus 5, the 3x plus 5 terms will cancel, and you're going to get 2x. If you take this divided by 3x plus 5, you're going to get the number on the outside, which is negative 3. And so this here is the answer. It's equivalent to our original expression. And so that's how you can factor 6x squared plus x minus 15. It's going to be 3x plus 5 times 2x minus 3. And you could FOIL this expression to make sure that it's equal to this. Now the last one that we're going to talk about, number 4, is 27x cubed minus 64. So what can we do to factor this expression? It looks like the first one, but it's a little different. Notice that you could take the square root of 9 and 64. So this is a difference of squares. Notice that you could take the cube root of 27 and 64. But it's not easy to take the square root of 27 because it won't give us a nice whole number. So this is the difference of perfect cubes situation. And the formula that we need to apply in this case is a cubed minus b cubed, and that's equal to a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. So what is a and what is b? Here's a question for you. If a to the third is 27x cubed, what is a? Well, a has to be the cube root of this. The cube root of 27 is 3, and the cube root of x cubed is simply x. So a is equal to 3x. Now, what is b? b to the third is equal to 64. Not negative 64, but positive 64. This negative sign belongs here. The cube root of 64 is 4, because 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. So we have B. By the way, for those of you who want more practice examples on factoring, or if you need help with a topic that you don't see in this video, go to YouTube and in the search box type in new algebra playlist and then type in my channel name, Organic Chemistry Tutor. My algebra playlist will come up and you can find more examples on factoring or other topics in algebra that you might need help with. So feel free to take a look at that when you get a chance. Now let's go back to this one. So we have the left side of the formula here. All we need to do is complete the right side, now that we know what A and B are equal to. So A is 3x, and then minus B, which is just 4. A squared, that's A times A, so 3x times 3x is 9x squared. AB, that's 3x times 4, that's going to be 12, and there's a plus sign between it. It's going to be 12x rather, and then plus B squared, so 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. And so this is the answer. Now let's move on to number 6. Which of the following is a solution to the equation shown below? Now, whenever you wish to solve an equation, you need to isolate the variable. You need to get it on one side of the equation. All the other numbers, you want to move to the other side. And once you get that variable by itself, whatever is on the other side, that's what x is going to equal to. So let's begin. The first thing we want to do is distribute. We want to get rid of the parentheses. So here we have 3 times x, which is going to be 3x, and then 3 times negative 15, 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. And then we have 5 times x, and then 5 times 3, which is 15. Now our next step is to combine like terms. Negative 15 plus 7, that's going to be negative 8. And then 15 minus 41 is negative 26. Now let's add 26 to both sides. And simultaneously, let's subtract both sides by 3x. If we do this, notice that the x variables on the left will cancel. And so what we're going to have right now is 5x minus 3x, which is 2x, and negative 8 plus 26, which is 18. So now the x variable is only on one side of the equation. Now we need to get rid of the 2. And one way in which we can do so is by dividing both sides by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 2x divided by 2 is x. And so we get the answer x is equal to 9, which means answer choice C is the answer. Number 7. Which of the following equations corresponds to the graph shown below? So looking at our answer choices, we could see that all of them are in slope-intercept form. That is y equals mx plus b format. The number in front of x is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. Now, what is the y-intercept for this particular line? What is it? Basically, it's where the line touches the y-axis. So the vertical axis is the y-axis, the horizontal one is the x-axis. And we can see that every mark represents 1. So on the y-axis, this is negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. So the y-intercept, our b value, is negative 4, which means we can eliminate answer choice D, because here the y-intercept is positive 4. Now the next thing we need to consider is the slope. Here we have a slope of negative 2, negative 3 over 2, and positive 3 over 2. Now, what is the difference between a positive slope and a negative slope? A line with a positive slope will be going up as you move to the right. A line with a negative slope will be going down as you move to the right. So this line, would you say it has a positive slope or a negative slope? As you move to the right, notice that it goes up. So the slope for this line is positive. Understanding that helps us to eliminate answer choice A and B because they both contain a negative slope. They should have a line that goes down as you move to the right. So therefore, answer choice C has to be the correct answer. Now, another way in which you can get the exact slope is by finding another point on this line. So we have the y-intercept, which is at 0, negative 4. And we can see that there's another point here, which is at a y value of negative 1 and an x value of 2. Now recall that the slope is basically the rise divided by the run. So to go from the first point, which we'll call P1, to the second point, P2, we need to go up 3 units from negative 4 to negative 1. So that's the rise. We're increasing by positive 3. And the run, we need to travel by 2 units to the right. So the slope is 3 over 2. Therefore, you can clearly see that C is the right answer. Number 8. Simplify the expression shown below. Now, before we do this problem, it's best to go over some rules when dealing with exponents. Let's say if we're multiplying x squared by x cubed, what should we do? Whenever you're multiplying two common bases, you can add the exponents. So 2 plus 3 is 5. Another way to see this is that x squared basically means that you're multiplying two x variables together. X cubed means that you're multiplying 3 x variables together. And so you get x to the 5th because you're multiplying a total of 5 x variables together. So that's the first rule we need to know. When multiplying common bases, in this case x, you can add the exponents. Now what about dividing? Let's say if we're dividing x to the 7 by x to the 4th. When you're dividing, you can subtract. So you take the top exponent and subtract it by the bottom one. So 7 minus 4 is 3. You get x cubed. Now to confirm this, you can expand the expression. X to the 7 means that we're multiplying 7 x variables together. And x to the 4th means that we're multiplying 4 x variables together. So we could cancel 4 x variables on the top and on the bottom, which leaves us with 3 x variables on the top. And so this becomes x cubed because we have 3 left over. Now what about if we raise one exponent to, let's say, another exponent? So here we have x squared raised to the 3rd power. What should you do? When you raise one exponent to another exponent, you need to multiply. So 2 times 3 is 6. This becomes x to the 6th power. Now another way to see this is to understand that this 3 tells us that we have 3 x squareds being multiplied to each other. And each x squared is basically 2 x variables multiplied to each other. So notice that we have a total of 6 x variables. Thus, this whole thing is equal to x to the 6. So whenever you raise one exponent by another exponent, you need to multiply. So now let's work on this example. The exponent on 2 and 3 is 1. 2 to the 1st power is just 2. So what we're going to do is distribute this exponent to all the exponents on the inside. So here we're going to have 3 times 1, which is 3. So this is going to become 2 to the 3rd power. And then 3 times 3 is 9. So x to the 9th power. And 3 times 4 is 12. Y to the 12th power. Now let's do the same thing here. 4 times 1 is 4. And then 4 times 2 is 8. And finally, 4 times 5 is 20. Now, what is 2 raised to the third power? What is that equal to? That's 2 times 2 times 2. So basically, you're multiplying 2 3 times. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Now, 3 to the fourth power, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Let's write that out. Now, these two 3's will give us 9. And the same is true for those two 3's. And then 9 times 9 is 81. So 3 to the fourth power is 81. Now let's multiply x to the ninth power by x to the eighth power. When you're multiplying common bases, you can add the exponents. So 9 plus 8 is 17. And let's also multiply 8 by 81. 8 times 81, that's going to be 648. Now, for those of you who for some reason can't use a calculator, you can go back to the old school way of doing math. 8 times 1 is 8, and then 8 times 8 is 64. And so you get 648. Now, let's multiply y to the 12th by y to the 20. So we need to add 12 plus 20, and that's going to give us 32. So this right here is the final answer. 648 x to the 17th power, y to the 32. That's it. Number 9. Simplify the expression shown below. So negative 3 times 5x squared y to the 7th z to the 4 raised to the 0 power. What is that equal to? Now you need to know that anything raised to the 0 power is 1. X to the 0 is 1. 5 to the 0 is 1. So anything raised to the 0 power is 1. So what's the final answer for this problem? The final answer is not 1. Everything within the parentheses will become 1 because it's affected by the exponent, which is 0. So this entire portion highlighted in blue, that is equal to 1. Now we still have a negative 3 on the outside. So it's going to be 1 times negative 3. So the final answer for this problem is negative 3. Now let's try this one. Simplify the expression. Now what do you recommend? Should we simplify the stuff within the parentheses and then raise it to the second power? Or is it better to distribute the exponent and then simplify everything on the inside? Both ways can give you the right answer, but in this particular case, it's better to simplify before we apply the exponent. 36 to the second power is going to be a big number, and so I don't want to deal with that. So let's simplify everything on the inside. Now I'm going to write 36 as 9 times 4, because 63 is also divisible by 9. I can write 63 as 9 times 7. Now, what is x to the 4th power divided by x to the 9th power? So whenever you're dividing, you need to subtract. Take the top number, which is 4, and then subtract it by the bottom number, which is 9. 4 minus 9 is negative 5. Now you can put a 1 on the bottom if you want. After you subtract it, whatever result you get is initially on the top. Now when dealing with a negative exponent, you need to move the variable to the bottom to make it positive. So this is 1 over x to the 5th power. Now for those of you who wish to understand it, you can do this. So we can expand x to the 4th by writing 4x variables, and x to the 9th, I'm going to write out 9x variables. So we can cancel 4 on top, 4 on the bottom. So we don't have any more x variables on top, so we're just going to put a 1. And on the bottom, we have 5x variables, so this is 1 over x to the 5th. That's another way in which you could see it. So let's put that on the bottom. Next, we're going to divide y to the fifth by y to the negative 3. So take the top number, which is 5, and then subtract it by the bottom number, which is negative 3. 5 minus negative 3 is the same as 5 plus 3, and so this becomes 8. Because it's already positive, well, no matter what we do, after you do this subtraction thing, it's automatically on top. But if you get a negative exponent, then you move it to the bottom. So we have a y to the 8th on the top. Now let's do the same thing with z. So z to the negative 4 divided by z to the negative 6. So let's take the top number, negative 4, and subtract it by the bottom number, negative 6. So this is going to be negative 4 plus 6, which is positive 2. So because we have a positive exponent, it's going to remain on the top. Now before we distribute the exponent, let's cancel the 9. 9 divided by 9 is 1. And now we could distribute 2. So I'm going to write this as 4 to the first power and 7 to the first power. 2 times 1 is 2. So we're going to have 4 squared. And then 2 times 8 is 16. And then 2 times 2 is 4. On the bottom, we have 2 times 1, which is 2. And then 5 times 2 is 10. So basically, multiply all the exponents by 2. Now 4 to the second power. That's 4 times 4, which is 16. 7 squared, which is 7 times 7, that's 49. So this is the final answer. 16 y raised to the 16 times z raised to the 4 divided by 49x to the 10th power. Number 11. Which of the following is a solution to the equation shown below? Now, whenever you have fractions separated by an equal sign, what you want to do is you need to cross multiply. So we're going to multiply 2 by x minus 1. And then we're going to multiply 4 by x minus 3. Now let's go ahead and distribute. So 2 times x minus 1, that's going to be 2x minus 2. And 4 times x minus 3 is 4x minus 12. Our next step is to subtract both sides by 2x. And at the same time, we can add 12 to both sides. So these will cancel. Negative 2 plus 12 is 10. 4x minus 2x is 2x. And so we have 2x is equal to 10. Next, we could divide both sides by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And so that's it for this problem. E is the right answer choice. Number 12. Which of the following is a solution to the equation 6x squared minus 29x plus 28 equals 0? So what techniques do you think we need to use in order to solve this equation? Now, there's different things you can do. If you don't know, you can take one of the answer choices, plug it in, and see if you get 0. That's one option. Another option is to factor. We have a trinomial where the leading coefficient is not 1. It's 6 in this case. So we can factor it, or we can use the quadratic formula to get the answer. So we're going to use the last two methods. So let's factor it first. Let's multiply the leading coefficient by the constant term. So what is 6 times 28? 6 times 20 is basically 120. If you have 6 $20 bills, that's $120. 6 times 8 is 48. So 120 plus 48, that's going to be 168. Now, what two numbers multiply to 168 but add up to negative 29? So these are going to have to be two negative numbers. If you divide 168 by negative 1, you're going to get negative 168. If you divide it by negative 2, you're going to get negative 84. And it's good to use a calculator at this point, if you're allowed to do so. Now, we could also divide it by 3. This will give us negative 56. And if we divide it by 4, it will give us negative 42. So let's pick a bigger number. Let's try dividing it by 8. So that will give us 21. Notice that these two numbers, they add up to negative 29. So once you create your list, you just have to find out which pair of numbers will add up to the middle coefficient. Now what we're going to do is we're going to replace negative 29x with negative 8x and negative 21x. Now let's factor by grouping. So let's take out the greatest common factor in the first two terms. In this case, we could take out a 2x. 6x squared divided by 2x is 3x. Negative 8x divided by 2x is negative 4. Now, in the next two terms, let's take out the greatest common factor, which is going to be negative 7. Negative 21x divided by negative 7, that's going to give us positive 3x. Positive 28 divided by negative 7 is negative 4. So next, we need to factor out another GCF, which is 3x minus 4. So if we take out 3x minus 4 from the first term, we're going to have 2x left over. And if we take it out in the second term, we're going to have negative 7 left over. Now at this point, we can set each factor equal to 0. Because if one of them is equal to 0, the whole equation is true. 0 times anything is 0. So we're going to set 3x minus 4 equal to 0 and 2x minus 7 equal to 0. So let's focus on the first one. The first thing we need to do is add 4 to both sides. And so we're going to get 3x is equal to 4. Next, we need to divide both sides by 3. And so the first answer is what we have here. X is equal to 4 over 3. Now, there's another possible solution. So let's start with the second equation. And let's begin by adding 7 to both sides. So we have 2x is equal to 7. And then we could divide both sides by 2. So x is equal to 7 over 2. Now, the only answer that's listed is answer choice C. X is equal to 4 over 3. So that's the correct answer. Now let's talk about how we can use the quadratic formula to get the same answer. So I'm going to write the answers that we have on top. So it was 4 over 3 and also 7 over 2. Now here's the quadratic formula. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Now, you need to know that a is equal to 6, b is negative 29, c is 28. The equation is already in standard form. That is, it's an ax squared plus bx plus c form. So now let's plug in those numbers into the formula. So we said b is negative 29, and then we're going to have b squared, 29 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 6, times c, which is 28. And then this is divided by 2a, or 2 times 6. So this is going to change to positive 29. And 29 squared, that is 841. Now 4 times 6 is 24. 24 times 28 is 672. And then we're going to divide that by 12. Now 841 minus 672, it's 169. The square root of 169 is 13. So we're going to have 29 plus or minus 13 divided by 12. So first, let's do 29 plus 13, which is 42. And so the first answer is 42 over 12. The second one is going to be 29 minus 13, which is 16. So it could also be 16 over 12. So now we need to reduce these two fractions. 42 over 12 can be written as 42 is basically 6 times 7, and 12 is 6 times 2. So if we cancel the 6, we get the answer x is equal to 7 over 2. Now for the other answer, 16 over 12, we could say 16 is 4 times 4, 12 is 4 times 3. So if we cancel the 4, we get the other answer, 4 over 3. So if you don't want to factor, you can also solve the quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Once again, C is the correct answer. Number 13. Which of the following is a solution to the system of linear equations shown below? So go ahead and take a minute and try that problem. Now you could use the substitution method, or you could use the elimination method. I'm going to use the elimination method. I'm going to try to cancel the y variables. But right now, I cannot add the two equations because they won't completely cancel. Now, the common multiple of 2 and 3 is 6. So I need to get 6y in both equations. I'm going to multiply the first equation by 3 because that's going to give me positive 6y. And the second one by 2 because it's going to give me negative 6y, which will add up to 0. So let's multiply everything in this equation by 3. 7x times 3 is 21x. 2y times 3 is 6y. And 24 times 3 is 72. Now let's multiply everything in the second equation by 2. 5x times 2 is 10x. Negative 3y times 2 is negative 6y. And negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Now we're going to add up the two equations. So these will cancel. 21x plus 10x is 31x. And 72 plus negative 10 is 62. So now we can divide both sides by 31. And so this will give us the x value, which is 2. Because this is a multiple choice problem, we can already see what the answer is. We're going to write the answer as an x-y ordered pair. So it has to be D, because it's the only one with an x value of 2. But let's calculate y. So once you have the x value, you can plug it into the first or the second equation to get y. Let's use the first equation. So let's replace x with 2. And then let's calculate y. 7 times 2 is 14. Next, let's subtract both sides by 14. So we can bring this down. We're going to have 2y is equal to 24 minus 14, which is 10. And now we can divide both sides by 2. And so 10 divided by 2 is 5. So thus we have the ordered pair 2, 5. D is the correct answer. Number 14. The length of a rectangle is 4 more than its width. If the area of the rectangle is 60 square feet, then what is the perimeter of the rectangle? Well, let's begin by drawing a picture. So here we have the length of the rectangle, and this is the width. Now the area of a rectangle is length times width. The perimeter of a rectangle is going to be 2L plus 2W. It's basically the sum of all four sides. Our goal is to calculate the perimeter of this rectangle, but before we can do that, we need to determine the values of L and W. So how can we do that? Let's replace the area with what it's equal to, and that's 60. So we have 60 is equal to L times W. Now let's focus on the first sentence of the problem. It says the length of a rectangle is 4 more than its width. How can we convert that sentence into an equation? So the length is 4 more than the width of the rectangle. So L is 4 plus W, or you can write it as W plus 4. Because we have two missing variables, we need two equations to solve those two missing variables. So what we're going to do is we're going to use substitution. These are the two equations that we have. We're going to replace L with what it's equal to, that is W plus 4. So we're going to have 60 is equal to W plus 4 times W. So now we have one equation with one variable. Now we can solve it. But let's distribute W first. W times W is a W squared. And then W times 4, that's going to be 4W. Now I'm going to take the 60 and move it to the other side. It's positive on the left side, but once I move it to the right side, it's going to become negative. So I have 0 is equal to W squared plus 4W minus 60. Now what we can do at this point is we can factor the expression. Notice that we have a trinomial where the leading coefficient is 1. So let's find two numbers that multiply to negative 60 but add to 4. So let's make a list. So if we divide negative 60 by 1, we'll get negative 60, but these two numbers don't add up to 4. If we divide negative 60 by 2, it will give us negative 30. If we divide it by 3, we'll get negative 20. If we divide it by 4, that will give us negative 15. If we divide it by 5, negative 12. And if we divide it by 6, negative 10. Now notice that these two, they add up to negative 4, but not positive 4. So what we could do is switch the signs. Instead of using positive 6 and negative 10, let's use negative 6 and positive 10. These two, they still multiply to negative 60, but now they add up to 4. So we can factor it by writing W minus 6 and W plus 10. So now we can set each factor equal to 0. So looking at the first one, W minus 6 is equal to 0. If we add 6 to both sides, we can see that W is equal to positive 6. For the second one, if we subtract both sides by 10, W is equal to negative 10. But when dealing with a real-life geometric shape, we're not going to have a negative number to represent the length of, let's say, the width of the rectangle. So this won't apply. The width can't be negative 10. That wouldn't make any sense. Now recall that the length is 4 more than the width of the rectangle. So it's going to be 4 plus 6, which means the length of the rectangle is 10. So now let's go back to our picture. Let's draw the rectangle. So it has a length of 10 and a width of 6. So we can see that the area is 10 times 6, which is 60 square feet. Now this side is 10 and this side is 6. So to calculate the perimeter, all we need to do is add up the four sides. 10 plus 10 is 20, 20 plus 6 is 26, plus another 6, that's 32. So the perimeter of the rectangle is 32 feet. And so that's it for this problem. Number 15. Graph the following linear equations. So let's start with the first one. How can we graph the equation x is equal to 2? Since we only have a variable equal to a number, all we need to do is graph a vertical line at x equals 2. So the graph is just going to look like this, because x is always 2, regardless of whatever y is. Now let's go ahead and move on to number 2. Let's graph y is equal to 3. So instead of graphing a vertical line, we are going to graph a horizontal line at 3. So this is the graph y equals 3, represented in blue. Now let's move on to the third equation. How can we graph the linear equation 3x minus 4y is equal to 12? Notice that it's in standard form. ax plus by is equal to c. If you want to graph a linear equation in this form, the best method that I think you should use is to find the intercepts, the x and the y-intercepts. So let's begin by calculating the x-intercept. To do so, set y equal to 0. So this is going to be 3x minus 4 times 0, which is 12. So this whole thing becomes 0. So basically you can get rid of it. And thus we have 3x is equal to 12, and then we could divide both sides by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So this gives us the ordered pair 4, 0. So that is the x-intercept. So let's go ahead and plot it. So this is going to be an x-intercept of 4. Now let's determine the y-intercept. So instead of replacing y with 0, we are going to replace x with 0. So 3 times 0 is just 0. And so we're going to have negative 4y is equal to 12. Next, we could divide both sides by negative 4. So 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. So we have the point 0, negative 3. So the y-intercept is negative 3, which is right here. And all we need to do at this point is connect these two dots, or these 2 points, with a line. And so that's how we can graph a linear equation in standard form. Now, let's move on to part 4. Let's graph y equals 2x minus 3. So notice that this equation is in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So m, the slope, is 2, and b, the y-intercept, is negative 3. The first thing I like to do is start with the y-intercept, which is negative 3. Now, all we need in order to graph a linear equation is 2 points. We already have the first one, which is the y-intercept, which is 0, negative 3. We could use the slope to get the next one. Now the slope is basically the rise over the run. The slope is equal to 2, but you want to set it up as a fraction. 2 is the same as 2 over 1. So 2 is the rise, 1 is the run. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to travel up 2 units and then 1 unit to the right. And so that's going to give us the point 1, negative 1. Now let's repeat the process. So let's go up 2 and then over 1. So the next point is going to be 2, 1. And then after that, if we do it again, it's going to be 3, 3. And then connect the dots with a straight line. So that's how we can graph a linear equation in slope-intercept form. Plot the y-intercept and then use the slope to find the next point.